What's up, YouTube? StephenWorldwide here. I'm going to do a supplementary video. I'm going to give you some additional information to the video that I just made and uploaded last night about doing private lessons, doing private teaching, and making a lot of money in Korea. There are a lot of holes. There are a lot of things that I didn't talk about that I could have talked about, but a 30-minute blog I think is long enough. Plus I had to get to work. So I'm walking to work now, and I got some more things I want to tell you about. As I be careful so I don't get hit by cars. Okay. And believe it or not, I prepared some notes so I can talk about all this stuff that is on my mind. So let me see. All right, keep in mind, why are parents paying so much money for English teaching? And I have explained that in a couple videos. But this concept is important to understand. You want to get yourself in a situation where there are wealthy families. Check that out. A yellow Camaro blowing through this little neighborhood here. Cool. It's Bumblebee from Transformers. You don't have to be in a wealthy area like a Gangnam or Bundang to make a lot of money. I wasn't. I was in a small city outside of Seoul. But there are wealthy families that live everywhere, in every city. And you can just see one apartment building. You just look in the parking lot underground and it's all Mercedes and expensive SUVs, nice apartments. And those are the families that will have you in there teaching English for 30, 40, 50 bucks an hour. And of course, when I'm saying bucks in dollars, I'm just not using Korean currency, won, because it's easier to understand for a lot of the viewers that are English teachers. When I say $50 an hour, I'm talking about 50,000 won an hour. It's not an exact conversion. $1 US is something like 1,200 won. So I'm just rounding off. When one mom is paying you to teach English privately to her son or daughter, then her friends are going to see that, and her friends are going to want to do that. So it catches like wildfire. There's a little bit of jealousy going on there, or just kind of like it's keeping up with the Joneses. So if the mom likes you, you're a good teacher, the student likes you, and you ask for referrals, they'll tell, moms know moms, obviously. Their kids, they meet because their kids are in the same school, doing the same activities. And they're keeping up with the Joneses. So that's why you have a lot of opportunities to make money teaching English. Because it's part of the culture. And people do what people do. People do what other people do is what that means. So that's kind of the culture. All right. Let me see. What else? Okay. When your time is very valuable, that you got to understand, that is one of the resources you have is your time. And that's part of your value. You're providing a service, but you only have a set amount of hours during the day. And you have to keep that in mind. So what kind of students do you want to get? You want to get adult students, or do you want to get kids or young students? Which is the better student for you for private teaching? Can you take a guess? Adults or kids? Well, if you guessed kids, then you are correct. You are correct. You want kids. Why do you want kids? Because when you do private teaching for adults, whether it be university students that are 18, 19, or early 20s, and they want help studying for TOEIC. Or if you get people in their early 20s and they are asking for help with their resume or job interviews, and they're looking for a job. Or if you get moms in their 30s and 40s that just want to practice English with you. Adults come and adults go quickly. Adults will sign up, they'll take your class, they'll sit with you for maybe just one lesson, a few, maybe just within 2 months they usually drop out and quit. Because it's just a side thing for them, English. They don't really need English, number one. Number two, they meet you, you're friendly, and they think it would be fun. And then after a couple lessons, when they're not getting what they thought they would get out of it, they quit. Because their money they're paying is not worth it to them. So their expectations were a little bit off. And I'll talk about how you can eliminate that problem later. So they come and they go quickly. I had some adults that, if you find one like this, is great. I had some adults that kept their lessons going for a year as part of their daily routine or weekly routine. Once a week, I would come in during their lunch hour or meet with them when they're free. But adults, their schedule changes, especially if they have kids, they're very busy. They come and then they go. As for teaching kids, that's the way to go. Why? Simply put, their schedule doesn't change. All right. Their schedule doesn't change. So, as long as they're in school, elementary school kids, parents will hire you indefinitely. They'll just keep you going. As long as you're a good teacher doing a good job, and the kid is enjoying the classes, and you're going through the textbooks in a reasonable pace, there's no reason for them to stop. I've had some moms that stopped calling me, and I just thought that they were a little bit, I don't know, it's like their expectations were unrealistic too. I had one mom that was a wealthy family. The dad was a dentist. I never met him. He was never there. And this mom was so hardcore with English. She had a Korean English teacher come in and teach their kids. And then she would leave, and I would come in 15 minutes later, and then I would do an hour with the kids. The kids were not well behaved. Here's the crazy corner. All right. Nobody whizzed by me today. The kids were not well behaved. They were spoiled, and they made a big fuss when I showed up. But then when the lesson started, they were nice and they were fun, but they were just weird. Like, their behavior was weird. But their English ability was pretty good, I think, because the parents traveled around with them a lot. And they were so wealthy, it was like a library of books and textbooks. And she would put a stack of textbooks down on the table and tell me, I want you to teach this, I want you to do this book, do this book, do this book. And every week it was something different, and it was just peculiar. And then I did that for about 6 months, and then she stopped, so we'll see. Hi, Rio.
Oh, hi, Steve.
How you doing?
Good.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
All right. See you later.
Okay.
All right. One of my students just walked by. All right. So, yeah, you want kids. You definitely want to teach kids. That's the best because it's consistent. They don't drop out. And it's nice when you develop a relationship with a kid over a year and you see their progress with English. They start off really shy and they can't do anything, and then after a year they're much more confident, and they're just kind of a better person after you had a chance to teach them and tutor them. All right, how can you how can you make a lot of money per hour? You have to maximize how much you make per hour. When you break it down, you only have, let's say realistically, 10 hours during the day to make money. You whittle that down. You need obviously you need some personal time. You need some travel time to get to the jobs. It comes down to realistically 8 hours during the day if you want to work hard to make money. Wouldn't it be great to make $100 an hour for all those hours? Imagine making $800 a day. That's like lawyer money, isn't it? You can do that. And how do you do that? Well, it got to the point where my schedule was so busy that when I got one student at 40 an hour, I was not happy about that. I was not happy about using that hour for just making $40. You want to get to that point where you're so busy, you get a group of students together, and that's a difficult thing. One student at, let's just say 40 an hour is fine. You want to get 2 or 3 students together, and here's the challenge of that. Usually a mom meets you and she wants you to teach her kid and nobody else. Unless you're lucky and you have a brother and a sister type thing. That's one problem. The other problem is ability levels. If they're not the same abilities, parents are not going to want their kids in the same class. Rarely does it happen where the mom just wants you to teach their kid for 1 hour alone. They want their kid to get all the attention. That's another thing too. So you have to find a way to, when you get busy enough, you can kind of force parents or just tell parents that you'll only do it if you have 2 or 3 students at once, and that it's only worth it to you if you make 80 or 90 or 100 an hour. And this is possible. It might sound impossible to you, but parents will go out then and talk to people and get 2 or 3 students together, and they'll take your class if you put that together. So that's how you can maximize your hour. You get 2 or 3 students together, you give a discount the more you get. So like 1 student would be 40. You can do 2 students for 70, and you can do 3 students for 90, maybe 3 students for 100. And then I don't know how you handle this. Like if 1 student is sick and doesn't show up, you can figure that out. I would just say that, if they're sick and they don't make the lesson, I never kept the money. But if you, in the beginning, when you set up the lessons, you got to put a stipulation in there. If somebody's sick, if you're sick, if they're sick, what to do about that. And then you decide. I just found that, I'll talk about how to collect the money. But if you don't take the money up front, they will cancel a lot. You take the money up front and promise them the lessons, they're more obligated to not cancel on a whim. All right. Quickly, how did the lessons go? How did I teach? What did I do? Well, I gave an hour lesson generally. For students that are 10, 11, 12, it's fine. Younger students, they can't sit still for an hour, or it's difficult for them to sit still for an hour. So you might just do a 45-minute lesson and charge accordingly. So for the hour, I would show up. Don't show up too early. You don't show up more than 5 minutes early, because the mom's getting her apartment ready and cleaning up after the kids because you're coming over, and getting the dinner table ready for you to sit down. If you're going to a coffee shop, you do want to go a little bit earlier because you want to secure a table and get that table. Coffee shops in Korea are busy because there's nowhere else to go except for home. If you don't want to go home, go to a coffee shop, sit there, and that's how it goes. It's another one of those crows. You came a different way.
Yes.
He crossed me and now he's come back a different way. All right. So I would show up, and then for the first half hour, I would teach with the book or teach the lesson after our greetings, and we have a routine. Got to have the same routine. And then we would take a 5-minute break at the middle of the hour. The kids would have some snacks. You have a coffee. Sometimes usually the mom would leave you something to drink, a glass of water or coffee. Konnichiwa. And then when that's done, you have about 20 minutes left. Let's say 25 minutes left, and then you play a game. And there are a lot of games, board games you can print off the internet. They're English-speaking games. So if you play Snakes and Ladders, for example, was a popular one. You can use the lesson of the day, use the English from the lesson of the day. And you basically, the kids love games, obviously. They love board games. You want to have a variety of games so it doesn't get boring. You don't even need prizes, just winning is enough for the kids. But the point is that they're using English in a fun way. And you're not hitting them over the head with the textbook for a whole hour. So half of it is a game and the other half is learning the English with the textbook. A lot of the books have CDs. And it's hard to carry around a little CD player, radio. So you can rip the CD on your computer and put it on an iPod. Use your phone. Smartphone, or a lot of the times the parents get a radio just to play the CDs. Or you can do what I did. I saw a CD player for sale at a garage sale or at a flea market, and it was $10 or 10,000 won, and it worked. I grabbed that sucker and I brought it to that coffee shop that I was teaching at, the coffee shop classroom that I mentioned in the last video. All right, hang on a second. Let's sit down. All right, I'm halfway there. Let's see. All right, textbooks. How do you choose textbooks? I mentioned that before. You get an elementary school textbook, or a textbook good for elementary school age students, that can go from beginner to high beginner. And you want to pick a book that has a series, like a series of 4 or 5. That way when you're done with a book, and figure 1 week would be 1 unit. So if 1 unit is 4 pages, you kind of cruise through the 4 pages in the half an hour. Then you play the game in the last half of the hour. And then every week you go through 1 unit, and if a book has 10 or 12 units, then you know how long it's going to last, 3 months or 4 months. And if you have the student for a year, you know, you're going to go through 4 books. So it's good to know ahead of time that when the book is done, what's the next book? Because the parents don't know. They're going to ask you what book to get. You know, so you have to create your own system, the way you teach, what you like to do, and then you present that as your product. That's your service. That's what you have. If you ask them what they want, well, I'll talk about this later, but like, people don't know what they want. They want to give you money for English, but they don't know what they want, and I'll explain what that means. And that's it. It should be something easy to buy, like a book on Gmarket. I'll just tell you, I used a book called English Time on Gmarket. The books were just 20,000 won or $20, then a little bit more for the CD. But a book and a workbook, if you get a workbook, then that gives them some homework to do. And I didn't assign a lot of homework. But if the parents wanted it, you got to ask them, then get the workbook and have the students do the workbook. They have a week to do it. And usually the mom helps them with it. So I had one student where I would show up and it was obvious the mom was doing the homework for the kid. And then she would write, her handwriting, she would write it purposely to look poor, so to look like the kid did it, but I knew that she was doing it. I guess that's a good mom, right? Instead of forcing the kid to do something that they hated. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the kid did some of it. All right. Where am I? All right. How do you ask for your fees? How do you negotiate and get your money and ask for how much you get paid? That's up to you. There's a couple factors there. How busy is your schedule? How full is your schedule? If your schedule is not that full and you don't have a lot of prospects, then you can charge a low amount of money. As a foreign English teacher, I wouldn't charge any less than 20 an hour, 20,000 won an hour. Part of the problem of being in Seoul, and I said you got to get out of Seoul if you want to make a lot of money. Number one, your expenses are way higher. You're blowing through money. If you're young, if you're in your 20s, yeah, you want to live in Seoul because you want to drink beer with other foreigners. But if that's not important to you, if you're not addicted to foreign food and you can survive without a plethora of delicious hamburger or barbecue or authentic New York style pizza restaurants and all the great stuff that you get in Itaewon and in Seoul, if you can live without that, or if you can live with just going there on the weekend, then you'll make a lot of money. And if you have a busy schedule, then you can ask for a lot more. And wait, before I get there, the problem with Seoul is this. You tell a parent that you're going to charge $50 an hour, or 50,000 won an hour, they can easily go right to the internet and find some international, some student that's studying that'll do it for free. Meet her at a coffee shop, and for a coffee, we'll sit there for an hour and tutor English. But when you live outside of the big city, you are the only one. You are the big fish in a small pond, and it's take it or leave it. And a lot of times, parents will take it. Your students will just take it. So let's just say that you have a busy schedule or you're not desperate for lessons. The first question everybody asks is how much? How much are the lessons? And what I did was I told people with a smile, I said, after I talked to them and sold that my English is very clear and easy to understand, I'm a good teacher, I have years of experience, and at that time I'm working on my master's degree, and I have certificates for teaching English, and the best thing is students love me, and students love to spend time with me and learn English. After that, the student is asking, okay, well, how much for a lesson? And I would just say, I'm expensive. I'm not cheap. And that would kind of get them ready for sticker shock. Sticker shock is when you tell them how much and they're in shock. So I would tell them how much it was an hour. And it's either, this is how much I am an hour, and if they might expect it to be 10,000 won an hour, and they would be unrealistic. A lot of times they'll say, well, I can't afford that, I'm sorry. But if they're a parent, they'll say something like, okay, when do you start? So parents have a budget for education, and they might have like a $500 a month budget for English, for example, that they'll spend at private schools. And if their kid's not in a private school, you're the private school. A couple of my students, when I stopped teaching them, they signed up and went to Hagwon after I was done with them. So they have money set aside for learning English. So that's how you ask for fees. You just you tell them how much it is, and if they have sticker shock, there's nothing you can do about it, but you can give a reason, like you can just say, my schedule is very full. I only have a few hours during the week left. So this is how much I am per hour. If some students drop out and I have more times, I'll let you know. Something like that you can say if they have sticker shock and don't want to do it. But when you're hustling, you need to make as much as you can per hour. And if you're working at a Hagwon now or a public school and you don't know how much you make per hour, figure it out. You might only be making 15 or 18 an hour, and you should be making over 20 an hour. At least 25. That's my opinion. Especially if you're far from home and you miss your country and living in Korea is not really comfortable for you. If you're not making a lot of money, then what's the point? All right, how do you collect money? I would advise cash. You will get students that want to transfer money to your bank account, and that leaves a trail. And if there was any time, listen, there is obviously risk with this. You're going outside the law. You're taking cash under the counter for work, for a service. And there's a couple ways that you could get busted. If there's any reason that the immigration is tipped off, they follow you around. I've heard stories of immigration agents like standing around subways and questioning foreigners when they walk by. Where are you going? Are you teaching privately? I don't know anybody personally who had that happen to them, but I heard stories like from 10 or 15 years ago they used to do that. Maybe somebody will see you with books out with somebody and they'll just like spy and see if there's money exchanged. They could do a raid And by the way, I know at least one teacher. They did a whole wave of expulsions. The immigration went into private schools, and if the schools weren't obeying every law to the T, then the English teacher was kicked and banished out of Korea. And it really wasn't even their fault. It's the school wasn't paying the taxes the right way or whatever. And it's a sad story because a lot of these people are good people, quote unquote good people, good for Korea. Korean people love them. They're good educators. They make life for Koreans better by their presence. That's my opinion of what a good person for Korea is. And they get kicked out of Korea and they can't come back. And the ironic and sad part about it is there are plenty of teachers in Korea that all they do is complain, and they act like they hate Korea, and they bitch about the culture, and they bitch about how things are terrible here. And they're on Facebook, and you see the same names in the same chat groups shitting on Korean culture, and it's just hypocritical. Because to me, it's like, if I ever want to criticize Korean culture, there is an equally repulsive thing about my culture that can be criticized. So why would you criticize one culture and not the other? And just why would you be negative in general? You want to be positive, and you want to appreciate and praise all the good things, and just forget about the bad things and don't worry about it. But those people get to stay in Korea. There's people that cause fights, they get drunk, they puke all over the place, they abuse women, and they get to stay in Korea. So that's the sad part about that. But I digress. Let's get back to private teaching. So I would say just take cash and collect cash up front. So take a month's worth of lessons up front. The reason you do that is if you don't, people will cancel like the day of the lesson, or sometimes a half an hour before the lesson. The mom will say, oh, my kid is sick or something. To avoid that, tell them ahead of time. If somebody's sick, notify me immediately, as soon as you can. Notify me the day before if you have to cancel. And some teachers told me to tell them to keep their money. You keep their money if they cancel, but I didn't do that. I was nice enough. If they cancel, I give them I owe them a lesson, basically. And they have to trust you too, and you have to conduct yourself professionally as well, and not cancel or show up late or just perform badly, be a bad teacher. You have to be a good person, and you have to do the right thing, and because this is built on trust. Do you hear this music in the background? It's Katy Perry. It's like elevator music or some kind of electronic keyboard music that's they're cover songs of pop songs. It's crazy. All right, what else? All right, so I was able to build up a schedule. As I told you, I started around 11, and I would do an hour from 11 to 12. Then my next job would be like 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. I would teach an hour, but the travel was 15 minutes each way. So from 11 on Tuesdays, but usually it was like noon to 9, including travel time. So let's say 12:30 to 9:30, get home at 10. My schedule was full, and almost each hour, or 7 hours out of that, was $40 an hour average. And here's another thing I didn't mention. I worked weekends too. Saturdays and Sundays, not the whole day, but I would do 1 hour on Saturday from 12 to 1, and that paid $80 an hour, and that's why I did it. And then I did a Sunday evening. I put a block together. Sunday evening, I would work from 5 to 8, and in those 3 hours, I made like 130 in those 3 hours. That's like a little bit over 40 an hour for that. My schedule was so full, that's the only free time I had. Now, why would I work on weekends? That's crazy. I had a girlfriend, and I spent a lot of time with her, and then we broke up, and I said, screw it. I have extra time now. I'm not gonna run into Seoul and, socialize, and I just wanna make money. And I cranked it out for the last 6 months that I was in Korea. So that was a conscious decision to work and make money and sacrifice some of my social time, and I'm fine with that. If you're in your 20s or you're in your 30s, you're going to think I'm crazy, but listen, I'm in my 40s, so it's not that big a deal. And here's another thing. You tell your students ahead of time. Sometimes you're going to tell them ahead of time when you want to take a break. So those lessons on Saturdays and Sundays, once a month, I told them, I travel a lot. So I would tell them ahead of time, I'm not going to be in town that weekend, and I'm going to be traveling. And you don't have to tell them where, but sometimes I would tell them, I'm going to spend the week in Japan, or I'm traveling to the big Gwangju, or I'm going to Busan, or whatever. And they just have to deal with it, because you told them ahead of time you're going to take some breaks. That saves them money, and that gives you once a month or once every 2 months, depending on how much you want to work, it gives you a chance to take a break on a weekend. So that's another reason why I was making so much money. I also made like an extra $300 on the weekend. You can opt out of that, of course. You can do whatever you want. With that busy schedule, I was also doing a master's degree. You might think that's crazy. I would get home at 10 and then stay up till 12 or 1 a.m., another 2 hours, working on my master's degree, watching the video lessons, writing the blogs. You had to post blogs, and getting my research papers ready. Every week I had a research paper due on Sunday night at midnight. And with the time change, for me, that was Monday at 4 p.m., which was great. So I had an extra Monday morning to get my work done. I would wake up in the mornings around 9 and then work until 11, put in another hour or two. So I would spend about 4 hours during the day at home working on my master's degree. So I was hustling in more ways than one. I'll talk about my journey with my master's degree in another video. All right, last thing here. I'll finish up. You're going to get people in private teaching students that drop out. And every time you gain experience and every new experience you have with a student in private teaching, you learn something new. And you add to your quote-unquote your sale when you initially meet them and you do a consultation. I would meet my students for the first time for free at a coffee shop, with or without a Korean friend to help translate. Moms are a little bit worried about you and whether or not you speak English, or whether or not they can speak English to you, whether they can communicate. There's a lot of details you need to set up, so I always recommend bringing a Korean friend that you trust or the Korean teacher that you befriended to come and set up all the details. And these are some of the details you want to mention. I talked about how to ask for fees, how to ask for your fee, but you have to explain some of the obligations ahead of time. You have to ask them what they expect. Ask them what exactly do they want from you. And a lot of times they don't know, and they have unrealistic expectations. And what I would do is I would tell them this. I would say that I have a lot of experience, I have years of teaching, I've taught privately, I've taught all ages, and I have my own system for elementary students, depending on your level. I have textbooks I can recommend. I'm reliable. I'm fun. My students love me, and then I would just sell myself like that. And then I would talk about my schedule. And unfortunately, I only have this hour free during the week. Does that work for you? So on and so forth. So you schedule the time. And then you make it consistent. And you tell them ahead of time that this is what happens if somebody's sick, or if you have to cancel, or so forth. But you also have to temper their expectations. You have to find out what they want. And with adults, they just want English practice. And you have to tell all your students that they're not going to speak fluent English like me, the teacher. They're not going to speak like that overnight. It's a long process. It's a slow process. And you will dedicate that hour and that time, you will devote it to them and doing your best to make sure that they have an enjoyable time with you and that their English skills increase over time. And it's hard to measure how much their English increases over time. So a lot of adults sign up and they take your lesson, and then after 1 or 2 or after 4 lessons, they realize that their English is not going to be fluent. unless they do it for years and so forth, so that they drop out. So I almost talk them out of the lesson. I almost tell them, are you sure that you want to pay me this amount of money? Because not only are you paying for my expertise and my experience and what I bring to the table, but you're paying me for my time. I don't have a lot of time. I have a lot of students, and my time is very valuable. And this is how much my time is, and everything I bring for that hour. Are you sure that you want to do it? And we can do it for 1 month. You can try this for 2 lessons or for 4 lessons up front. And if you like it, we'll keep going. If you don't like it, that's totally fine. I won't be offended if you decided that you don't want to continue for whatever reason. And when that happens, either they'll tell you a month later, oh, they're busy, they can't make the lesson this week, or they're going to travel, they won't be back for a month. They give you some lame excuse why they don't want the lessons, and then after a while, once you get the point that they don't want to continue, you can just say something like, listen, call me whenever you want to start the lessons again. And meanwhile, you sign up somebody else in that hour. Once you get the okay from them that they're not going to, that you can even say, I have students that want this hour. Is it okay if I start teaching other students at this time? Then they say okay. So that is how you eliminate a lot of the quitting objections and a lot of the uncertainty in the beginning, is you set up expectations realistically for them ahead of time so that they don't quit right away when things aren't as fun as they expected it would be, or their English doesn't get as great as they thought it would be. All right, that's basically it. I have to prepare my lesson. I have a lesson today where it's my choice of what to teach. The lesson plan is blank from my company, so I'm going to do modal verbs and giving advice with the word should. So I got to start writing. I have an hour to go, less than that. All right, thanks for watching the video. Subscribe if you like what I'm doing. Click the like button, hit the little bell to get reminded of new videos that I upload, and make some positive comments, constructive comments, and tell me what you would like me to talk more about. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.